Hey everyone, welcome back to VOXQ. Today we've got some wild ones. Grab a drink, settle in, and let's get into it. There's something about confidence without proof that makes people feel untouchable. Like if they say something loud enough, long enough, people will just accept it. And sometimes people do, not because they believe it, but because it's easier than pushing back. Until it isn't. And this is where it gets interesting. The first story starts with Alex during what should have been a quiet memorial weekend. Alex's family had gathered to remember his uncle. It was calm, slow, respectful. Conversations stayed soft, people kept things light, and no one wanted tension. And then Ben showed up. Now, Ben wasn't immediate family, but he had been around long enough that nobody questioned him being there. He carried himself like he belonged, like he had some inside understanding others didn't. At first, everything felt normal. But then the conversation shifted to the house. Alex's uncle had left behind a property, and naturally people started talking about the mortgage. Nothing aggressive, just trying to understand what needed to be handled. That's when Ben stepped in. "Oh, that's already taken care of," he said casually. The room paused for a moment. Alex looked at him. "What do you mean, taken care of?" Ben leaned back, confident. "I've been handling the payments for months. Your uncle asked me before things got bad." And just like that, he planted the idea. Now here's what people didn't expect. He said it so smoothly that a few people actually believed him. It sounded responsible. It sounded like he had stepped in when no one else did. But Alex felt something off, because no one had ever mentioned Ben being involved with the mortgage, not once. Alex stayed calm. "That's strange. My dad was still getting the utility bills." Ben didn't hesitate. "Those are separate. I covered the mortgage, not the utilities." And for a moment, it almost worked. People shifted slightly, unsure who to believe. The room leaned toward Ben, simply because he sounded certain. But it wasn't. Alex pulled out his phone, and this is where everything shifted. He opened the payment history his dad had been tracking. Dates, confirmations, everything lined up clearly. Then he looked back at Ben. "If you've been paying the mortgage," Alex said slowly, "why does every bill still show unpaid notices from the same time?" The room went quiet. Ben blinked. "That's different." But it wasn't, because now everyone was looking at the phone. Alex's aunt stepped closer. "Let me see that." He handed it over, and you could feel the shift. No one said anything, just silence, heavy and clear. Ben adjusted in his seat. I was going to pay it, I just hadn't yet." And there it was. The story didn't explode, it just collapsed, quietly. And that made it worse, because now everyone could see exactly what he tried to do. He wasn't helping, he was inserting himself to look important in a moment where no one wanted to question him. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because now people started asking why. Why say something like that at all? Ben didn't have answers, just weak explanations. And by the end of the weekend, the shift was obvious. He wasn't part of the conversations anymore. He had been moved without anyone saying it directly, to the outside, exactly where the truth had put him. And that's the thing about lies like that. They don't need a big moment to fall apart. Sometimes all it takes is one screen and someone willing to check it. And then everything changes. Now the second story takes us into a workplace setting. Avery had been working for weeks on a CRM migration. Long hours, constant updates, making sure everything was ready for a major launch call. Everything was set, or at least it should have been. About an hour before the call, Rachel walked over. "We have a problem," she said. Avery looked up. "What kind of problem?" Rachel crossed her arms. "The migration notes are wrong. Leadership is already asking questions." And just like that, she dropped it. In front of people. The room shifted. People looked over. Conversation slowed. Avery felt that pressure immediately. "What do you mean wrong?" Avery asked. Rachel shrugged. "You handled the documentation. The data doesn't match." And here's what she didn't expect. Avery didn't panic. Instead, Avery turned the screen toward her. "Let's look at it," Avery said calmly. Rachel hesitated, just for a second, but that was enough. Because now it wasn't about words anymore, it was about proof. Avery opened the system logs, login history, edits, timestamps, everything. And this is where it gets worse. These changes were made last night, 9:42 p.m. Rachel shifted. And the login used, Avery continued, was yours. Silence. People leaned in. Rachel laughed, but it didn't land. I was just checking things. Avery nodded. Then why were entire sections rewritten? No answer. Because there wasn't one that worked. The evidence was simple. Time, user, action. And that was the moment everything cracked. The manager stepped forward. Rachel, explain this. Her confidence dropped. I thought it needed adjustments. And instead of saying that, Avery replied, you blamed me an hour before the launch. No one spoke, because everyone understood. This wasn't a mistake, it was a setup, and it failed. Rachel wasn't part of the launch call anymore. Avery was, and leadership saw exactly what happened. Not the accusation, the proof. And once that's visible, it sticks. Now the third story takes us into a property manager setting. Reese had been dealing with a property manager named Brandon for months, the kind of person who spoke like they had authority, even when they didn't. The issue was a parking space. Simple. But Brandon made it bigger. He started telling neighbors that Reese was using a space that didn't belong to them, that things had changed, that there were records. And at first, people weren't sure, because it sounded official. One afternoon, it escalated. You need to move your car, Brandon said, loud enough for others to hear. I've been parking here for 2 years, Reese replied. Not anymore. I'm managing the property now. And this is where it gets worse. He pulled others into it. You've seen it, right? That space isn't theirs. People shifted, uncomfortable. Reese took a breath, then pulled out his phone. Okay, Reese said. And then everything shifted. They opened a folder. Photos. Time-stamped, weeks, months, over a year, each one showing the same thing, the same car, the same spot, consistent, undeniable. Here's last week, swipe. 3 months ago, swipe. Last year. Now everyone was looking at the screen, not Brandon. And what happened next made it impossible to deny, because his story had nowhere to go. It proves consistency, Reese said calmly, and I have the lease if you want to keep going. And that was it. The energy flipped. People stepped back from the situation, because now it was clear. This wasn't confusion. This was control, and it failed. Brandon stopped arguing. Within days, the issue disappeared. No explanation, no apology, just silence. And that silence said everything. When you look at all 3 stories, the pattern is obvious. It's not just lying, it's believing confidence can replace proof. Ben relied on timing, Rachel relied on pressure, Brandon relied on public perception, and all 3 made the same mistake. They underestimated proof. Because proof doesn't argue, it just exists. And once it's there, everything else starts to fall apart. That's the part people don't expect. It's not just the lie getting exposed, it's everything built around it collapsing. Trust, authority, credibility, gone, and it happens fast. 1 second they're in control, the next they're explaining themselves. And people remember that moment, that exact second where everything stopped making sense. That's what sticks. Not the lie, the exposure, the moment where everything becomes undeniable. And once that happens, there's no going back. Things don't reset, they settle, quietly, clearly. And if you've seen it happen, you already know how it feels. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. If you made it this far, you already understand how these moments work. They don't disappear, they stay with people. So stick around, because there's always more stories where the truth shows up exactly when someone thinks it won't. And I'll see you in the next one.